Cleon Coleman, real estate investor, coming to you live on People Street.
Starlight, California skyline. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride.
What's up? Welcome to People Street, everybody. Tonight, I have my boy, Cleon Coleman, here with us. What up, Cle?
What's going on, Ted?
Bro, I'm so glad that we were able to hook up, man. How you been, bro?
Just enjoying life, taking it one step at a time, trying to continue to grow and learn how to love deeper and deeper each day and just be purposeful every day.
I heard that, man.
That's it,
I
every
heard
day.
that. Congrats on your marriage,
Thank you,
bro.
sir. Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's been great.
Dude, that's so wonderful. One of the reasons I wanted to have Cleon on tonight. Cleon is one of my oldest buddies. I mean, we both from Chattanooga, Tennessee. We played Little League baseball together. What's the name of our team? The Eagles?
Yeah, the Eagles.
The Eagles, yeah. Played on the Eagles.
That's right.
Grew up together, went to high school together, went to Morehouse together. So done a whole lot of stuff together. But Cleon is one of the most humble cats I know, and has been extraordinarily successful in a number of ventures, including real estate. But in addition to being successful in real estate, what's very impressive about Cleon is his mind state regarding financial matters and stuff like that. So Cle, tell us, man, who is Cleon Coleman?
Well, again, thanks for the intro. I am, like you said, born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Morehouse educated. I taught for a few years, but always was one who wanted to have some type of entrepreneurial pathway. I couldn't think of a business to start. Some people that make gadgets think about come up or creatives, if you will. But for me, I'm more a system-oriented kind of guy, and I just like to make two turn to four. So with that being said, and also due to some early interactions with some key individuals, I was led to real estate. I taught for 4 years, like I said, and then moved into medical sales, pharmaceutical sales, and started buying houses. And I knew at an early age that I wanted to be what used to be called a landlord. People still use that term, but I want to provide affordable housing. And I felt like that was a way to help me take care of my family, and also take care of other families and help build communities. That's really what I'm about. Also, in addition to that, I have grandkids, so I'm about legacy too. And I'm really passionate about preparing the next lineage to do bigger and better things and to be ready to make an even bigger impact on what I've started or using the resources to do other things. But that's really, I think, a fair assessment.
So Clee, let's back up a little taste, man. What did you major in Morehouse?
Biology major.
Okay, biology major. How did you get from biology to entrepreneurship? What was your path? Can you tell us about
Yeah,
that?
sure, sure. So I was a biology major. Health science was my focus, trying to decide between wanting to be a dentist or a doctor. I was leaning towards dentistry because of one thing that attracted me towards dentistry was the fact that I saw many dentists who owned their own practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't seeing that as much in medicine. So I was attracted to being able to buy the building, set up shop, and be a dentist. So um, that was the pathway that I was focused on. But then I started to volunteer at one of the elementary schools across from Fair Street, one of the elementary schools, and I fell in love with teaching. And at the same time, I didn't meet, but I had one of my good friends from Morehouse whose parents were teachers, but they also did real estate. And I met his uncle down in Alabama, and he was showing me just one conversation. I've never seen him since, but he changed my life because he showed,
Mm.
oh yeah, yeah, and that's one of them things. You never know what occurrence will be life changing. So I've never seen him since, but he opened up the book for me. He told me what he did. He actually had like 40 houses at the time.
Dang.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and it was a Thursday afternoon, and I'm in college, want to get a 6-figure job mode, and here it is on a Thursday afternoon, and it's 1 o'clock, and he's over at his mom's house just hanging out, and just met some of his nephew's college buddies, and he was working on his own schedule, and I was attracted to that. And so I asked him questions, and he was open, and he gave me the numbers and everything. And not only did he impact me in terms of a vision, but he also, to this day, when I meet a young guy who is serious about what they're trying to do, interested in real estate, ask me questions, and really sincerely want to learn, I remember that. And so I always try to give it back, pass it forward because it was passed to me. And it's almost surreal sometimes because I think back to that day, and it's like now I'm on the couch. Now I'm sharing. I feel like I'm him.
Yeah. Yeah. You the OG now.
Yeah, I mean, that trips me out sometimes.
Clee, man, there's a lot to unpack here,
Yeah.
man. Okay. Would it be safe? Okay. Yeah. I just want to, one of the things that's most impressive about Clee, um, and we both went to Morehouse. If you've gone to one of those types of schools, or if you've gone to school, period, there, particularly, in our age group, I think it would be fair to say, Clee, that there was a push to go into certain types of careers, law, medicine, professorships, whatever the case may be, business,
Yep.
but working for somebody else.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I
Yep.
think that's the critical distinction. And a lot of my peers right here today, including myself, are primarily dependent on employment by a tertiary entity.
Yeah.
You, on the other hand, were able to effectively retire a good while ago. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. My plan was to retire about 40, and I was able to do that. Um, it was in 2016, so I thought I was done with um, the pharmaceutical sales arena. And so we had a layoff, and that was really a blessing in disguise because it allowed me to kind of just gradually move right into retirement because I received a severance package. And so it was nice to have a little nest egg there. And that was my first trial run to say, hey, look, I'm not, as a matter of fact, I've never actively pursued a job since. Now, I took a year and a half off, traveled, did some things. And then I ran into a route salesperson, and they were like asking if I'd be interested in a part-time pharmaceutical job. So I took that. It came to me, and I did it, and I did it well, and it was a great experience. And then that position was eliminated due to cutting the sales force. I took another year off, and then one of my old managers called me and asked me if I'd be interested in working for this company that he was with. And the first thing I told him, I said, hey, Scott, you know me, and obviously you know this company. Do you think this would be a good fit? And he said, yeah, I think it would. So went ahead and worked that, and then went very well. Worked it for 2.5 years. And then again, layoffs. Took another year off. And then I had a friend who reached out to me. She was in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we had known each other from our previous days when she was with Lily and I was with Behringer. But she said, hey, something came across my email, position open in Chattanooga, Knoxville. Would you be interested? I said, hey, here's my resume, send it. I said, hey, you can do what you want to do with it. So got a call. I was at a real estate convention, actually. Got a call, interview while I was in the hotel, and got the position. And I've been doing that for the last almost 2 years. So I've learned from this so I've modified what I thought I wanted. I've modified it somewhat. I learned two things. First of all, I'm in sales. So I always thought that you'd be better off in sales if you didn't have to make the sale. And it's true. I think it's, when you don't have to make the sale, you come off as just seeking ways to help your customers, seeking solutions for issues, but you're not driven by matrix. You're not driven by pressure.
Yeah.
It's just, and so now what I say is a job should be an experience as soon as possible. First come out, for most of us, when we first come out of college, a job is what we need to keep the lights on. A job is what we need to live our lifestyles. But as soon as you can, you want a job to be an experience. So now I go out looking, I go out to my customer, I look at my day, and I'm like, hey, how can I make a difference? Let's see how, if I go to this office and bring them lunch and sit and sit with the customers, so let's see what we get out of this. For them, who can I help? But I'm not driven by, hey, calls per day or all these different metrics, understand them from a business standpoint
Mm-hmm.
because you got to have some way to measure activity. I get it. It just doesn't drive me. And I'm very forthcoming about it. Even in the interview, I told my managers, I said, hey, I'm not driven by metrics. I'm driven solely by providing the return on the investment that the company puts in me because I'm a businessman too. So when
Mm-hmm.
I go out and I pay, if I have to pay for a plumbing job or an electrician or anything, I understand what it's like to, hey, say, go to a house where I may be in another part of the city. The house may be in the north end of the city, and I have to depend on you to do your job. I
Yeah, no doubt.
respect that. So, and I let them know that. And quite frankly, also, I've had my best sales years since I retired.
Yeah. So Clee, that's a very interesting point you make. Your primary drive on your job is not because you have to keep the lights on. You're driven by something else.
Yeah,
And then the other thing that I'm hearing is if push came to shove, you don't have to have a traditional job, correct?
that's correct. No.
Okay. Which is where most people would like to get to.
Yeah.
When you ran into this guy, man, down in Alabama, man, how did the conversation even start that he was involved in real estate? Like, what happened, man?
All right. So shout out to my boy Harold, Thurman Hall, Morehouse.
What up, Harold from Thurman Hall?
But no, we were headed to the Essence Music Festival, man, and he wanted to stop by his grandmom's house in Mobile, Alabama, and say what's up. And so when we pull up, I'm like, I'm a car guy, so I'm looking. I'm like, honestly, I just saw this big body Benz new model. They had just changed the models, and it was the brand new model with the chrome package. And I'm like, damn, who was?
Was it sitting on Dubs, Clee?
It was sitting on chrome. I know that.
Sitting on
Yeah,
Chrome.
yeah, man. And so I'm like, dang. And then Harold was like, oh yeah, my uncle's here. I'm like, okay. And so we get in there, and I'm like, I gotta find out what not ask Harold. I said, what does your uncle do? He said, oh, he's in real estate too, because his parents were in real estate as well. His mom and dad. So I guess his dad's brother was doing it in Mobile. And so I walked in there and I just said it. I just asked, I said, man, Harold told me you're in real estate. And so what do you do? And he was like, man, and at the end of the month, this is what I have to pay out. And this is what comes in. And here's the difference. And the numbers made sense. And then I walked away saying, hey, that's why he's able to be here at 1 o'clock on a Thursday and not somewhere working.
In the middle of the day, posted up.
Right. It opened my eyes. And then on top of that, I was like, man, and that's why he's driving the big body out there. So,
Yes.
and so soon after that, I met him, and then my aunt was married to a guy who was doing the same thing in Atlanta, and he took me riding, and he had a Benz too. I'm like, so I was like, man, I want to. And then I volunteered and taught, and I was like, man, I want to teach. Basically, I want to teach and do real estate too, and because I love teaching, and I was really finding myself very interested in real estate. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was it, man. I had to make a decision between dentistry and teaching and eventually real estate. And I had a pretty good pathway towards a dental school. I met with the dean of admissions. He told me I was pretty much in it as long as I performed on the DAT. But my heart wasn't there. My heart was in the real estate and teaching. And so
Mm-hmm.
I followed my heart.
Tell us about the acquisition. Well, before you acquired your first property, Cleon,
Mhm.
there was a gap between the conversation you had with Harold's uncle and getting your first property. What knowledge did you gain in between your conversation with Harold and your first property?
And I just started reading, man. Once I made that decision, I just started grabbing any book on real estate that I could get my hands on. And I just read. I read for years. I found on the websites, looked at anything I could find, was on it when it came to real estate. And I had to kind of figure out what was my investor DNA, if you will. What was the best pathway for me? Because you can flip, you can wholesale, you can buy rentals. And I knew that for me, as I wanted to teach, but I really wasn't comfortable with the income. So I was like, I need residual monthly income. I need cash flow. And therefore the rental game was a better fit for me for what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being in sales. I like to interact with people on a one-on-one level, like what we're doing. And landlording rentals afford you an opportunity to do that too with the residents, because you a lot of times it's relationships with your subs too. So it's a relationship component to the rental market, and I thought that was a good fit for me as well.
Just so y'all understand, what's really going on. One thing I've always loved about Clee, and Clee, this is what I love about cultivating relationships
Yeah.
with people like yourself, others. I will say that, if you're watching and you do not water the relationships that you have, I would say that that is like the most critical thing you can do in life, is to water and make sure that you nurture relationships. And you've always had the type of personality where people are drawn to you, but you're also very humble, extremely humble. And I love that too. But just as, to clarify, um, the degree, because Cleon is not going to say it. Cleon is in my opinion one of the major, and I look up to Cleon. Again, Cleon is my mentor. I'm not ashamed to say, I'm happy to say that I know somebody like Cleon. Cleon, would it be safe to say that your portfolio consists of properties in the triple digits?
It did. Well, it was approaching the triple digits. It was approaching
Mm-hmm.
triple digits, and then and I always wanted, just to be transparent, I always thought 100 units would be ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And we were knocking on the door. But then I sold a nice chunk of that,
Mm-hmm.
and now I have what's called a sweet spot.
Okay.
And what I deem as a
We're looking for the sweet
yeah,
spot.
the sweet spot is, I live in Tennessee, so if I was to ask you, hey, how much do you need to maintain your lifestyle? That's the first question. And it's funny how some people don't know that, but
Mm-hmm.
you should know, hey, I need X amount of dollars to do what I'm doing, or what be it if I want to eat out every night, eh, travel once a month, gamble, whatever it may be, whatever your lifestyle is, you should know what that number is. And so I sweet spot is the number of units that I need to maintain the lifestyle that I like without working a job. And so I make sure that I stay above that.
Okay.
And so when I sold that big chunk, I was able to eliminate a lot of overhead.
Yes,
You get what I'm saying?
I get exactly what you're saying.
So what I learned was it's not necessarily the number of units. It is the how much you're making off a unit, and times the number that you need to get to that sweet spot. And then from there, because what happens is if you don't have to you don't have to stick your neck out as much with leverage.
Yes.
Leverage is a
Yes.
great tool, but it's like, you wanna use it as effectively as possible and minimize the risk.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So if you now there's when you're starting out, you gotta go a little harder with the leverage, but as you get more seasoned, then you can kind of reduce your leverage exposure, and then you still grow, but you grow differently. For instance, if I buy a house now, I don't have to use as much leverage. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? But now that
Just so can I
go
ask you
ahead.
something, Clee? Just so we're clear, from people that are not speaking the same
Sure.
vernacular, you're talking about leveraging debt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Debt.
yeah,
All right.
good,
Right.
good. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Which
Go ahead. Break it on down, though.
Yeah, it's just, it's a useful tool, but you want to get to a point where you don't have to use it as much. And you can still what you can do is you can still grow, but you just don't have to carry as much risk in the process of growing. And so, again, going back to that sweet spot analogy, once you get to a point where you like got enough business to where you don't have to work a job, and you can still do the things you want to do. That's the key. Now, you don't I'm not saying cut back on anything. I'm saying live your lifestyle. Then it's like at that point, it's like going back to medicine, risk reward, the balance. It's like, is it worth is the risk of, maxing out leverage even worth the reward at that point?
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
again,
Mm-hmm.
true success to me is freedom of time, freedom of options.
Mm-hmm.
That's what success. That's my narrative. I know we're in a capitalistic society where we fed different narratives and whatnot, but I think at the base, it is do, and I think we're all supposed to do something. Who's telling you what to do? Is it somebody else or your own heart? Soon as
Mm.
you can get there, the happier you'll be. That's
Mm.
what I say.
Boy, you better say that, Cleon. You better say that.
Yeah.
Cle, 48-year-old in Cleon
Hmm.
talking to 20-year-old Cleon, or talking to a 20-year-old today who wants to achieve the same level of freedom that you've achieved, Cle.
Yeah.
What do you, Cle, I'm coming to you. I'm a young cat. Cle, I heard about you. Your name is ringing.
Yeah.
Tell me how do I start?
First thing is, you start by, this is going to be I may say this 2 or 3 times, in different ways. You start by a recognition and an acceptance of the fact that everything comes down to a test, okay? And so no matter, my little grandson, he's playing sports.
Mm-hmm.
He had a baseball game on Saturday. That's the test. That's what we see, the test. But in order to do well on the test, you got to prepare. You got to
Mm-hmm.
study.
Mm-hmm.
You want to take the DAT, you want to take the MCAT, you want to take a major school academic test. The grade is one thing, but the preparation is another, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I say this to say what I would tell a young guy right now is everything's a test. So, you're always studying. You're always preparing, not just academically, not just financially, but also emotionally. Okay. Let's say we drive. Somebody's going to cut you off one day. Somebody's going to piss you off on the road.
Mm-hmm.
That's an emotional test. If you don't get your mind right, if you don't prepare for that, you may snap. You may go
Mm-hmm.
out. Somebody, knucklehead comes across you. You make the wrong decision, your whole life's it's messed up. So these are tests that we always seem to come across, we will always face. So I would start by just saying, get your mind right for your journey, right? No matter what we
Mm-hmm.
do. All right. Now, from there, if you want to be successful, I would start by saying, hey, look, I know we're in a world where we're fed all these narratives, but you gotta take the narrative, you gotta remove those narratives, put the bonders up, and you gotta spend some time with yourself and write your own narrative.
Mm.
You have to do that,
Mm.
or you will always be a puppet. You
Mm.
may never be free.
How does one write one's own narrative, Cle?
By being still, by walks in nature, by understanding that there are no coincidences. So when Harold
Mm.
uncle, oh yeah. So when Harold, not a coincidence. And then you understand that God speaks through people, through things, through nature. And so when you find, and we all have these moments where we light up when we see something, talk to somebody, something.
Mm-hmm.
And we all also, on the flip side, as adults especially, we light kids up. It continues. And but you got to understand this going into it at 20, man. So when you have your radar on and when you find people and have experiences that light you up, listen, take note. That's guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Be still, pray, get in tune with your heart space, man. Because again, I think so many times if you don't, you're just gonna follow what the narrative tells you to do. Had I been a dentist, I know for a fact, I tell some of my doctors that I talk to, I would not be in real estate if I had gone the doctor route because my drivers would have been different. I wouldn't have been like, I'm a rental guy, right? So I'm driven. I had to figure out how to supplement my income because I didn't feel like I was going to get enough doing what I love to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I had been making a lot of income, I wouldn't have gone the rental route. I wouldn't have. But I may not have been free. You know what I mean? So I may not, and that, we're not saying about free, I may have not have been able to retire a couple of times. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, those 3 years that didn't work for anybody, traveled the world and traveled all, I wouldn't have been able to probably do that. You see what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? So, but going back to your question. So now that's just the general stuff. From a financial standpoint, find some income. You got to have a skill set. Um, hopefully do something that you really enjoy doing. But anything that you make, especially at 20, anything that any income, any money that comes to you, you put it to work. Period.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say buy, if I was talking to my 20-year-old self, I'd say buy a duplex, live in the one, or buy a nice townhome, the attached townhome, live in one side, rent out the other side, and just start from there.
What type of team do you need, Khalid? If young cat says, who do I need on my team? Because that's what people ask me all the time. Who do I need? What type of people do I need on my team?
Yeah, yeah, okay. So you need first of all, let's talk about the type of players you need. You need a good tradesman. So you need a good plumber, a good electrician, a good carpenter who can kind of do all your handyman and remodel work. You need and you think could probably do your roofing work too. And you need a good banker. You need more than one good bankers. You need a good some real estate attorney contacts. You don't necessarily have to have them on your team, but you need to know where to go in case you need them.
How do you start a relationship with bankers, Klee? Because again, you and I know, and just for transparency, I've had some investment properties in Chattanooga, our hometown, and Klee has been gracious enough to share some of his banking contacts with me, which turned out really great. How does a person who's just coming into the game cultivate those contacts?
These are great questions, man, because you don't know unless you know. So what you got to do is, first of all, you got to understand what banking really is.
What is it, Klee? What is banking?
Banking is just it's sales. They're trying to will you in basically to get your money, really. I mean, so that they can put your money to work. That's all I mean, that's really what it is. They're trying to get your money, hold your money, and put your money to work. And the way it's put to work is through loans. Okay, so knowing what it is and understanding that, back in the day with the granite floors, the tile floors, the suits and all that was just to me, it was just to portray a very safe and sterile environment to keep your money, so to build trust. So that we don't have to hide our money in the walls or under mattresses. Let us hold your money. We got branches all over the city. We're in New York. You're on vacation. You don't have to take all this a bag of money. You can just go to ATM. So they're selling convenience and safety for your money that you work for, right? But they're really just taking your money and making it work, which is there's nothing wrong with that. That's business. So understanding this, if you look at it that way, well, then when you walk in trying to do business, you understand that, hey, they need me just as much as I need them.
Mm,
The loan officer, the commercial banker needs people like me to execute because they need to hit their goals. And so that sets the table for a fair and balanced relationship and creates a partnership.
mm-hmm,
You see what I'm saying? It's not like, can you help me? It's like, how can we help each other?
mm-hmm.
Let's do some business. Let's break bread. Let's make some things happen, right?
Yes,
And then
yes.
and then you perform as an investor, and then it makes them build trust in you.
Mm-hmm,
And then they want to do business with you.
mm-hmm.
Then the words gets out, and then you go to another bank, and they see your financials, and they like, okay, yeah, okay, I want some of that too. And then they're competing for business. Okay, and so that is no matter if it's a small deal or a big deal, that's really what it is. And
Mm-hmm.
so because it used to, I think it can be intimidating if you just think about it from, hey, this is the bank, or this guy's or guys on a suit, and wow, hopefully, hey, can I have some time with you? No, no, you go in there saying, hey, I got big plans. I know you what kind of loan, here's what I'm looking for. Can you offer it? You got a position of power too. And I think I love the questions that you're asking me, man, because these are things that we don't oftentimes know. And
Mm-hmm.
going back to the athletic analogy, man, I was thinking about this. Like we need to teach our sons and our daughters these aspects and these how to work these systems early. Think about it like this. I was thinking about this. I was at the game, right? My grandson's 9. And you see how serious people are with athletics. and we if you want to have a son that's in the NBA or a successful basketball player, baseball player, you start teaching them how to play at 4 years old, 5 years old. But when it comes to financial success, it's like nobody's teaching anybody anything until they get a real job.
Why you think that is, Cle?
I don't know, man. It's like I don't know why, but I know what we got to do, and we got to start taking that same approach. Well, I'll get to the one in a second. I don't know. I haven't thought about it, but but what we need to do is take that same approach that we have towards athletics and immerse our kids into teaching them finances starting at 4.
Mm-hmm.
If we're gonna practice baseball at 4 and throw some ball, we're gonna look at a little. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna walk in a bank. We're gonna have a conversation about stocks, assets versus liabilities.
There you go.
And then you may not understand it at 4, but if by the time we're 7, it should start hitting, making sense a little bit more. And by the time you're 17, you're gonna be way ahead of everybody because you started the conversation a decade earlier, right?
Mm-hmm.
As to why is it like that? Well, I don't know if it's values to a degree.
Let me ask you this, Cle. Man, you just, I mean, you deep into the weeds. I want to go even deeper.
Yeah.
The school system. One of the things. Do you remember my friend Clint Jackson?
Mm-mm.
I got a partner from Morehouse. He lived on my floor, Huber Hall. He's an entrepreneur
Yeah.
as well. And one of the things we talk about all the time is recognizing that the school system is not primarily responsible for the education of our kids. School system is a contractor, all right? But we're responsible
100%.
for what our kids know and don't know.
That's right.
So that said, if we know that the school is not teaching financial literacy, it's obviously incumbent upon us to take that responsibility and expose our kids. Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were talking to young parents that have a 5-year-old, man, what are 3 things that you would tell them to get them started in addition to taking them into a bank? What are 3 concrete,
Yeah.
3 to 5 concrete things that you would say to do with those kids?
Fundamentals would be assets and liabilities. You remember in biology, you always start out with the cell, right?
Yeah, always start out with the cell.
6th grade, 7th grade, G-Bio, freshman year, the set.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Same thing with a 5-year-old in finances. Assets, liabilities. What's an asset? What's a liability? Car is an asset, it's a liability. And things that they can identify with, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then what I would do is I would teach, being a former biology teacher, I would teach predator-prey relationships. And I would say, there's a food chain and there's a predator and there's a prey, right? All work together, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you watch a nature show and say, hey, that lion is a predator, right? It eats the zebra. It has to have zebra in order to survive, right?
Yeah.
All right. Business owners. You spend your money all the time, you are what? You're prey. If you, and I'm not, this is capitalism. So that would be my way to teach capitalism because it really is similar to predator-prey relationships. And I used to tell my students in biology, I would say, hey, look, I don't care if you like biology or not. I'm trying to use biology to help you think better because you need to be able to think in this world. If you don't think for yourself, if you don't think at all, you will be prey.
Mm-hmm.
And you will be taken advantage of. So I would teach. So I would use predator-prey relationships to kind of teach consumers versus producers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Interesting you saying that,
yeah.
Clee. I had my son read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which explicitly discusses assets, liabilities, and things like that. And that's so critical, man. And that we understand those things, but also that we're able to identify where to go for information, man. So once you have a relationship with a banker, so Clee, once you have a relationship with contractors, how do you go about getting a piece of property? You know what I mean?
Again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, man. For that question, I would say buying the property is the test. That's the test. Okay. So how do we go about passing the test and buying the property is the preparation. So you got to study. Of course, you read your books to understand what the numbers should look like, but you got to study your zip code, man. You gotta use your resources. And you can go on the internet and you can go to realtor.com or Zillow. It's numerous ways that you can take an area of interest and you study that market and understand what houses are going for, what they're being sold for, what the asking price is, how long, what the average rents are. You can go and act as if you are a renter, call for rent signs. But you need to understand what you can buy a house for, what expected rents would be in that area, and then play with the numbers because you got a formula that works based on your preparation. And you just got to keep playing around and then when you find something that with the asking price matches what the rental price and it spits out a ratio that's good for you based on what your formulas should be for that area, then you execute and you take the test and you go out and buy the house.
Cleon, kind of from an absolute value standpoint, is there a profit margin that you look for, whether it's percentage wise, profit margin over what you pay in a mortgage, percentage wise that you consider that makes it worth the deal? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
How do you identify which property is worth your while?
Yeah, it used to be. I used to use a rent to purchase ratio. So I used to want my rents to be 2%, my monthly rent to be at least 2% of my purchase price. That's kind of just surface level, just to see if it was even just to open my eyes. Even now, right now in this current environment, that 2%'s gone down to like 1%. So if you had something that was they were asking what 150,000, you would want to at least be able to rent it out for $1,500, to get that ratio. Even moving deeper than that, uh, I like to kind of take half of my rent. So let's go back to that $1,500 rent price. Half of that would be 750, and I want at least $100 between my principal and interest in that 750. So if the rent's 1,500, half of that is 750. I don't want my principal and interest to be more than 650. And that's based on a study that looked at over 45,000 rental units, all different um, classes, class A, class B, class C. And it didn't matter uh, class, what part of the country, still came down to where about 50% of your rent is eaten up in expenses. And so you want to at least have $100 spread between your half that rent and your principal and interest. And usually, if you do that, you got a pretty solid spread. Now, think about it now. If your rent, if your mortgage, I mean, if your principal and interest is like 650 on $1,500 rent, you're gonna have a pretty good spread. So you're gonna be well and above. You're gonna have some really good numbers, but you're gonna have roofs that you gotta repair, units, furnaces.
Yeah, yeah.
So it allows you to absorb that cost for expenses and still have your spread in place. That's what I like to use.
Is there a percentage that you keep behind? I guess that difference between the mortgage and what you pay for principal and interest, or how much of what's left do you earmark for unforeseen expenses? Because
Oh
you and
yeah,
I know
yeah,
roof go
yeah,
bad, water heater go
yeah,
out.
for sure.
Is 20%?
Yeah,
Okay,
20%.
okay. When you Clee, okay, I love that dog. So Clee, when you begin to get property, 10 properties, 20 properties, 30 properties. Obviously, you need a system. I was reading one time the difference between billionaires and everybody else is they operate they've mastered using
Yeah.
systems. How do you manage a real estate behemoth? What tools do you use to manage that, man? Do you use a human tool? Do you use software? Use a combination of both?
All the above at certain points. So I used to have at one point I took had a One of a nurse that used to work in one of the offices, she wanted to work from home, so I paid her to be my full-time assistant. And so she, if you wanted to rent, you would call and she would answer and she would meet you at the house, show up and she would dispatch repair calls and keep my books and all that. But that's a human element. Things come, things go. So that it lasted for years. But now I think the last time we talked, that's what I was using actually.
Mm-hmm.
But now I use pretty much software. So I have some software that I use to manage the properties.
Mm-hmm.
It does pretty much everything. I use Buildium. That's the name of the software. Yeah, Buildium. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, you can do it all, man. It can collect your rents, you can run reports, it can track your vendors, your expenses that it can generate bills. You can pay your vendors through that. It does your bookkeeping. And now they've even at a tertiary service where, and this is a big deal too, where they have a call center to take
Mm.
in repair calls and they integrate it into my software. So for instance, if you had a toilet that was leaking at the base, you wouldn't call me, you call the call center and they would take notes and type those notes into the Buildium, my spreadsheet, and then I would get an email notification. They send the message out to my vendor that I select, and my vendor, my carpenter or my plumber, he'll accept the call. I'll see that they've accepted it, and I'll know that the repair call is in motion. I can do it so I can do that and just look at it over my phone.
Buildium,
Yeah,
y'all.
Buildium. It's major.
This is my boy Cleon Coleman. See, Clee. See, Clee. See. That's what I'm talking about, Clee.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Real talk.
yeah,
This is what people need to hear.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Because people, I hear young people, old people all the time talking about what they want to do. But honestly, man, sometimes there's too much information,
yep,
out there. And I think that is an obstacle to some people. And then narrowing down what is important. You know what I'm saying? The
mhm,
4 or 5 things. Remember, you've identified your banker,
yep,
you've identified contractors, you've identified a software system that basically is able to provide you the ability to manage properties at multiple points.
right.
Clee, what about when how do you select your tenants, man? You know what I mean?
Man, that's important too. That's almost like it made me think about marriage. Selection is everything, baby. You
Yeah, it
gotta
is.
screen.
Yeah.
You gotta because if you go wrong, it's a setback.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I screen? So there's an old saying by Maya Angelou, we all know it. When a person shows you who they are, believe them.
Believe them, yes.
Okay, and so when you screen, you gotta check for their evictions. You gotta verify their job. You gotta do your homework, man, because especially evictions and credit to a degree. The number one variable though is the evictions. If you see an eviction on the file, I'm sorry. So
Hall of Notes, no can
no
do.
can do. I can't go for that.
Yeah.
No can do. I can't. No, I can't. I'm sorry. So you gotta have to look at a person's history because they are who they are. We're talking about adults. We're talking about
Yes.
people. I mean, by the time you're 29, 30 years old, you are who you are. So you don't have to tell me your breadcrumbs will tell me everything I need to know in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the number one thing is just doing your part, preparing again, studying. And all you can do is use your credit report, your evictions history, and then criminal background. So, and and with criminal, life happens. So for me, I'm gonna try to look at the whole picture. So if it's somebody in their mid 40s and they had something that they did time or whatever, and it was at 28 and you haven't seen any issues since then and they present well, I'm listening to them. I'm not just going to write that off. Evictions more than anything, but I understand that we sometimes get caught up in stuff. Yeah, if it's a violent crime, probably not, but just if you were hustling in your mid 20s got caught up, now you're working and I see you've been working on your job for like 4 or 5 straight years,
Mhm.
I'll listen. So I just try to get a feel for the person.
What do you, how do you check for evictions, man?
Oh yeah, Billiam does all that.
Buildium does that
Oh
too?
yeah, yeah, it does that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey, y'all, Buildium is the ish,
Yes, it
clearly.
is. They collect
Dang.
my application fee, and then once I get the application fee, I run the screening, and and so I'll have a report looking at all. If they've had an eviction anywhere in the country, I'll see it. I get their credit report. I get their numbers,
Mhm.
so I can see if they've been paying bills. I can see which bills that if they do have a low credit score, I can see where they start. If what was the issue? Because sometimes it may be they didn't pay their credit card, but
Yeah.
they had a house and they paid their mortgage on time every month. I'll
So
probably
you're saying everything is a case by case basis.
everything, everything.
Do you, Clee? I mean, Clee has offered me some real world advice. I remember one time we were rapping, and I was telling you I was looking at a house I was thinking about buying, and you offered me some advice. Clee was like, "Man, you may remember this. You were like, man, I don't buy houses that face a certain way on a certain street." Or you said something like, "I don't buy
Yeah, I remember that conversation.
can you break that down?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
the people want to know the real
Yeah,
Clee.
well, we were talking about maybe in a transitional area where maybe it's a little active
A little
or
active,
has a
yeah, a little
reputation.
active.
I would say not a war zone. And we're not talking about New Jack City or nothing like that. We're talking about like just where certain streets may be more active than others. So the point I was making to you is I try to think like if I was selling dope or if I was in some dirt, I wouldn't want to be on Front Street. I want to be off in the cut, right? So
Mhm.
what I told you is in those kind of neighborhoods, I try to stay on the roads that the cops travel, that the buses travel, but mostly the main thoroughfares that are busy, because think about it. If you're trying to do something, you're not going to want to be right there on the busiest street in that area.
You want to be in the cut.
That's right. So when it
Yeah.
comes to investing and providing housing in these areas, I'm the opposite. I want to be
Mhm.
where you don't want to be, where you least
Mhm.
likely want to be.
Mhm.
And I don't wanna be where you would love to be. So if you turn off the main street, make a right, go up the hill, go and go into the no, I'm not trying to be over there.
Right.
I wanna
Right.
be
No doubt.
I wanna be right there on that main drag that cuts every neighborhood got a street that goes all the way through,
Yeah.
north,
Yeah.
south, or east, west. I wanna be
Yeah.
on that street.
Right. You're not trying to be right next door to the trap.
Exactly. One or maybe one street over. Or
Yeah.
or I wanna be where all the grandmoms are.
Yes.
'Cause there's street you know that. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
streets where all the old folks live. I wanna be on that
Yeah.
street.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Clee, Lord have mercy, man. You have provided so much information, Clee. In terms of when that you and I know that when you have a relationship with a banker, they're gonna ask you for certain
Yeah.
things. They're gonna ask you for your credit report. They're gonna ask you for your rent rolls. They're gonna ask you for a personal financial statement. For somebody that's never had to generate a rent roll, or somebody that's never gotten a personal financial statement, can you tell them how to approach that?
Yeah, yeah. First thing I would say is just start with Google on that. If just Google rent roll, PFS, personal financial statement, and just see what examples pop up. It's not hard. At the end of the day, the rent roll is just basically your rents and what you're getting off each property and your expenses, what you pay out on your mortgages, what your estimates are for your other expenses
Mhm.
and just your line items, and at the bottom, what your spread is. Your personal financial statement is similar, but all inclusive. So rent roll is just talking about your rental portfolio versus personal financial statement is everything. Your personal house, your job, if you work a job, your income from that, if you got a house, your mortgage, your car notes, and any stocks or anything like that. All it's the universal snapshot of what you are financially speaking
Mhm.
and it's
Mhm.
just in a spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And that's all. That's it. So rent roll is just looking specifically at your business, your rental business. Personal financial statement is looking at everything that you bring in to the in terms of income and expenses, and it just tells your story to a banker.
Is sec Oh, I'm sorry, Clea, I didn't mean to
No,
cut
no,
you
no, no,
off.
no. Go ahead. That's it.
Is Section 8 worth it?
I think so. I think so. I mean, again, it's one of those things that you understand. Uh, that the fundamentals are the same. You still got to screen. It's just about screening. There are plenty of people, good residents on Section 8. There's plenty of good residents that are not on Section 8. There's plenty of poor performers that are on Section 8, and there's plenty of poor performers that are not on Section 8. When it comes, again, narratives, man. Like Section 8 can sometimes have a stigma. Sometimes, in some cases, well deserved, sometimes not. But it comes down to you can't go on the narrative now. Section 8 is relationships, though. And what I mean by that is every housing authority, every city has its own housing authority. Here,
Mhm.
Chattanooga Housing Authority. In
Mhm.
Nashville or in Atlanta, they got their own housing authority. And so there are variances. So, some are wearing better than others, from what I've read. I don't know because all I know is Chattanooga, and it's been a good one. So, but if you're gonna go Section 8, you need to go to the Chattanooga Housing Authority or the Housing Authority and get to know some folks. Go in there
Mhm.
and talk to people, ask questions. Hey, let them know I got a good house. I'm looking for some good residents who can help me out. You got to build relationships there. You got to build relationships there. But if you do that and screen well, I think you can provide a good quality housing product to plenty of families that will appreciate it.
I'm not gonna hold you too much longer, man. I mean, but I do want to ask you this.
Yeah.
One of the conversations that we've had, and we talked about the political climate right now. Your perspective was, regardless of the political climate, we need to have mastery of what the financial realities are and have how to make it work for us. You remember that
Yeah, yeah,
conversation?
yeah. The scene that we're in right now is, at the very least, eye-opening, and hopefully it's clear, or even clearer today, that you got to be just very transactional. You got to go in and understand that, again, the game board is called capitalism, and you got to know how to play that game. You can't depend on governments. You can't depend on voters to come through for you. Hopefully, it's obvious that that's like the wind. It can blow one way, blow the next way. And if you're dependent on that, you're just going to be blowing in the wind. So what you need to do is, while everybody's distracted emotionally, you need to be focused transactionally and understand and try to be a master of the game, or as close to that as possible. And I'm in the real estate game, right? That's a part of the overall capitalism game. Okay. But like I tell young guys, they see the manifestation of me planting seeds. Um, early, you see the harvest in some aspects. But like I tell them, this is not 2008. And although you see real estate, for me, and I know a lot of TikTokers and social media talks about real estate and flipping and buy my course and all this and that. You got to be an investor. See what I'm saying? The core of capitalism is putting your money to work in vehicles, and you got to be a steward. You got to study the game and understand that, and be able to recognize which vehicle is the best place to park my money in this era. For instance, if it was 2016 and a 20-year-old was talking to me, now I may be doing real estate, but that 20-year-old may say, man, that sounds kind of familiar. This thing called Bitcoin is kind of like, it seems like a hot and emerging asset. If you
Mhm.
apply the fundamentals of '08 in real estate to Bitcoin in 2016, probably be a lot freer today, too. And so we have to understand that one of the key components to being a capitalist is finding places to invest. And just like the political climate changes like the wind, what's the best opportunity to invest can do so as well. And so one of the things I'm trying to do right now is, it's levels to this. So, we trade our time for dollars when we start to buy assets. Those assets mature, they season, they start to produce fruit. It's harvest time. And then, so level two is use your assets to buy assets. Therefore, I don't have to trade my time. I don't have to trade my time for the dollars to buy the assets because now I'm letting my assets buy the assets. And so for instance, what about if you let your rentals, like right now, market's down 20%, 25%. What about if you let your rentals go in on NVIDIA, go in on Microsoft because it's down, go in on just S&P 500 index because it's down 20%.
Because it's down.
Exactly.
And it's coming back up
Exactly.
eventually.
And I'm not buying it. My rentals are buying it. Get what I'm saying? That's so 20 years ago I had to use the money from my job to buy it. But what about now if I start letting my rentals buy it? Or if you bought Bitcoin, you sell a little bit and go into the market. You get what I'm saying? So you creating these asset production factories. Think about it like that. You got one factory, now you get a second factory, and then you get another factory, and you just keep building factories, and the factories keep producing income, and it's just like one big, loop spilling off income back into a system, and that is, I think, more important than it makes more of a difference than who you vote for.
Mm.
I think so. I think so. Because the first time Trump won, the first thing I did,
What'd you do?
2016, Trump won. I was like, I think it was no, was it 16? Yeah, it was 16. He won. The first thing I did was go and research black millionaires in the 1800s. Yes,
Mm.
I did. Because I knew, first of
It was
all,
a similar environment.
worse environment.
Worse environment. Yeah, exactly.
And I found people who nobody told me about.
Like who?
It was a ship maker, and there was this guy who was a landowner in in what's called San Francisco now. But the theme of it was they were entrepreneurs. They had to be. And there wasn't a lot of them, but they were out there. And those conditions were worse. Of course, that's I'm talking about 1800s. But then you can move forward and you'll come across, of course, Black Wall Street, Tulsa.
Yes.
Madam C.J. Walker,
Walker.
A.G. Gadsden.
Yes.
These are people that were in social environments way worse than this.
Yeah, no
And I
doubt.
had to go back and see it so that I could become less emotional and more transactional and stay focused. And so I think that's what we have to do.
You've given the equivalent of a TED talk, but we're gonna call it a CLE talk.
It's,
You know what I'm saying? You came through the night and gave the CLE talk.
hey, I enjoyed it.
CLE, as a final thing, man, when CLE wants to research anything, what does CLE go look at?
Honestly, the first place I go is the internet, man. Lately, I've been really kind of obsessed with Reddit. So if I have an idea, I'll just go to Reddit and type in what I'm thinking and see what comes out of it. And you'd be amazed, man. There's a lot of questions that are similar to yours that are out there.
Mhm.
So I'll go there. I'll try to find some type of forum. If it's like investing, I'll try to find some type of like MrLandlord.com. That's, I've always said I go there for.
MrLandlord.com.
Yeah, I always go there for the Q&A to see if I can research the topic that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Bigger Pockets. I used to go there a lot. I don't go there as much. But if it's on
Used to go where?
a place called Bigger Pockets.
I love
Yeah,
Bigger
yeah,
Pockets.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if it's stocks and whatnot, I'll just finance or I go to this place called Stock Twits. Yeah, try to find these community. I try to find communities that are speaking to whatever I'm interested in. Real
You say
community.
Stock Twix? How do you spell that, CLE?
STOCKTWITS, I think.
StockTwist.com. Hey, CLE, you the man.
Man, hey.
You the man,
I'm
CLE.
just trying
I'm
to do my
proud of you,
thing, man.
boy.
Thank you, man. You're doing great. Hey, I love what you're doing, man. You're really passing it forward, man. Being a catalyst to help people understand. You're a connector, man. And I'm proud of you.
Thank you,
Uh,
bro. I appreciate you, man. Cleon Coleman, y'all.
yeah.
I love it, CLE. Bro, dog, You laid it down tonight, man.
You like that?
Hey, Cleon, I want to thank you for falling through, man, and blessing us with the knowledge, man. I really appreciate you, man, and bless you, bro. And let's stay in touch like we always do, bro.
Let's keep it going, man.
Yes, sir. All
Appreciate
right,
you.
peace.
Stars.